Hey everyone! Today we're going to make Philly cheesesteak sliders. They're the perfect appetizer for a holiday party or a game day, tailgating type event. We're going to use real sirloin steak, although you can use roast beef deli meat, just putting that out there. But let's go over the ingredients first of all, and then we'll get started cooking and making these sliders. Our first ingredient, of course, is a pound of sirloin steak. I have it back here on the cutting board, ready to go, and I'm going to teach you how to slice that steak to get it the thinnest and best for the recipe. And then you're going to need 2 tablespoons of bacon grease, but you can also use olive oil or butter, whatever you have on hand. We have a clove of minced garlic, half of a medium yellow onion, and that's sliced up in longer slices so you can kind of see. We have 2 ounces of minced mushrooms, fresh mushrooms. You can use canned mushrooms, but fresh are going to give you better flavor. And then we've got a pepper. Now you can use half a pepper if you don't want a whole pepper, but we're using a whole pepper today, and we've sliced that up into thinner slices. For our seasonings, we're using half a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper, ground black pepper, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, which is going to give you amazing flavor, and then a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I call it Worcestershire. Dan calls it
Worcestershire.
Worcestershire. That's too much for me to say, so I say Worcestershire and just cut out all the middle sounds. Okay, and then we have 12 Hawaiian Rolls. Found these puppies on clearance. You can use any brand, just as long as they're Hawaiian Rolls. And then you're going to want mayo, Cheez Whiz, and provolone cheese. Alright, let's get started cutting our steak. I've got a pound of sirloin steak here. Now you can also use, a lot of people use ribeye or top round steak, but those are fairly expensive. So at the recommendation of our butcher, I'm using just a pound of sirloin steak. Things to look for when you're going to get steak for Philly cheesesteak: you want something that you can slice thinly, and you also want something that's going to be tender when it's cooked. And speaking of tenderness, that fat is a good indication that it will have both flavor and tenderness. Now, as we slice it, we're going against the grain. So the grain runs this way, and so we're going to slice against that grain. And you're also going to slice it at an angle because you want the thinnest slices possible. You see, I get a nice thin slice right there. That's perfect for Philly cheese. Now sometimes if you have a butcher, they'll cut the meat for you. You can just request that, but I wanted to show you how to cut this. Okay, sometimes you might want to cut off, if there's a piece that's tripping you up, just cut that off and you can slice that up later. It's not a big deal. Now I have read that it helps to get a thinner slice if you freeze your steak just a bit. Not all the way frozen, but partially frozen. Makes it easier to slice it thinner. I've never tried that method, but it is something to think about. We're going to start with some olive oil. About 2 tablespoons of olive oil or bacon grease or butter, whatever you have on hand. I usually like to use bacon grease, but today we're going to use olive oil. Now we've got 1 clove of garlic, minced up, half of a medium yellow onion, sliced up, 2 ounces of minced mushrooms, fresh mushrooms, and a bell pepper, sliced up. So you're going to stir this up and saute it for about 10 minutes or till the onion and peppers are softened up. You'll have this on a low to medium heat, probably more medium, but it just depends. You don't want to be splattering it all over the place. If you are using cast iron, you want to make sure that your skillet's heated up beforehand. That way, when you put the olive oil in, it's pretty much going to be ready to throw your veggies in and saute. You want a hot skillet to saute. And I'll say it again, I know we used olive oil today, but I really, really like the flavor of bacon grease in Philly cheesesteak. So now you're going to remove your peppers and onions from the skillet and we're going to cook our meat. Now you're going to add in your pound of sliced steak. You do half a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground black pepper, half a teaspoon of smoked paprika, and then a tablespoon of Worcestershire. You're going to give that a good stir. Mix it all up together. And you're going to cook your meat till it's almost done. You don't want it all the way done, because we want to get the flavors of the pepper and onion in with the meat too. And we don't want the meat to be overcooked either, because then it'll be tough and chewy instead of tender. Our meat is almost done. There's still some pink places in it. So we're going to go ahead and add in our veggies. I'm going to add them back in. I'm going to stir that up really good and just let it simmer until that meat is fully cooked. I think it's done enough, so now we're going to go ahead and take it off the stove and compile our sliders. Before we compile our sliders, I'm going to show you how to make the quick garlic butter spread that we're going to brush on top of the sliders. That way it's ready to go, and as soon as our sliders are layered, we can just brush that right on and throw them in the oven. I need to go over the ingredients with you. Okay, so we have 3 tablespoons of salted butter. We're going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of roasted garlic powder, or just garlic powder, whatever you have. And then we'll need a tablespoon of fresh parsley, minced up. You can use dried parsley too, that's fine. And I usually use Italian parsley for this, but this time all I have is regular, so I'm just going to go with that. I've got 3 tablespoons of salted butter. Now I'm going to add to that a 1/4 teaspoon of roasted garlic powder. You might need to whisk this up. I'm just going to use a fork and kind of beat it. Then you're going to add about a tablespoon of parsley. And just stir it up. Now, you're going to have to stir it again before we brush it on, because that parsley is going to go to the bottom. But that's okay. And then we're just going to set that to the side while we layer our sliders. Now, these are different Hawaiian buns than I've used before. Usually I have to slice through them, and I have the top half and the bottom half. These are already sliced for me, so I'm just going to remove that top half and set it to the side. It's kind of nice, actually. I've got these on a baking sheet too. Just a small baking sheet will do, because we're going to stick these in the oven. You also want your oven preheating at 350. Then you're going to take mayo and just layer mayo on that bottom layer of Hawaiian rolls. It doesn't have to be a thick layer, just a thin layer. I think my recipe calls for 1/3 cup of mayo altogether for 12 Hawaiian rolls, so now, speaking of the Hawaiian rolls, you can use any kind of rolls you want, dinner rolls, dinner type rolls. I like Hawaiian rolls because of the sweet flavor that they give. It just kind of mixes with the steak and the cheese really well. But there are lots of different kinds of dinner rolls that you could use. You can use brioche dinner rolls. You could use brioche slider buns, which you can actually find at Aldi. You could use regular slider buns with or without sesame seeds. You could use potato slider buns. You can find gluten-free dinner rolls. The options are endless. You can use any kind of dinner rolls you can find. Today I'm just using Hawaiian rolls. Then you're going to layer provolone cheese. Now my recipe calls for 6 slices, but I'm probably going to use 12 here because these rolls are way different than the other Hawaiian rolls that I used. So depending on how your rolls are laid out, you might need more provolone cheese. And you're going to scoop your meat. Now here is where you want to be kind of careful and try not to get a lot of the juice that's in the bottom of the skillet, because that's going to make your rolls a little bit soggy. But we're going to go ahead and just add that layer of meat and peppers and onions onto the sliders. Alright, I think we've got that. We've got enough meat on there, I think. I'm actually going to take that piece and throw it over there. Then you're just going to add a dollop of Cheez Whiz onto each, where you think each roll is. And it helps a lot if you'll heat up your Cheez Whiz, and then it'll flow off the spoon a lot easier. If you don't want Cheez Whiz, I know some of my family like just provolone better. You can totally do that. I just like adding both because it adds even more ooey gooey flavor. Alright, the last step is to put our tops back on. Well, this is not the last step. This is the next to the last step because we got to brush our garlic butter on. Just going to put these on the best you can. Kind of press down just slightly. Alright, now we're going to give that garlic butter a good stir, and then we're just going to brush it onto the tops of these rolls. And it's going to add even more flavor to these sliders. Delicious flavor. And it's going to make the top slightly crispy too as they bake. Alright, I think we're pretty much ready to go in the oven. So now we're going to cover these with foil. You're going to cover your sliders with foil and put them in the oven at 350 for about 10 to 15 minutes or until that provolone cheese is melted. You can kind of lift up the corner of the foil and look and see if it's melted or not. And then they're going to be ready to eat. I have a lot of readers that ask me if they can make recipes ahead of time, and with these sliders you can definitely make the meat and vegetable mixture up ahead of time, stick it in the fridge, and save it for when you're ready to make your sliders. The reason that I don't like to assemble the whole thing and make it ahead and save it is because your bread will get really soggy from all the juices in the meat and veggies. So you want to wait till you're actually ready to eat them to layer them up and throw them in the oven. So that will save you some time though, getting your meat and peppers and all that cooked up ahead of time. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. We'll have more recipes coming soon. I'll see you next time. Is it good?